Philly Foodworks is an online farmers market where you can shop a diverse variety of fresh, local produce, as well as local meats, dairy products, baked goods, and pantry items, all delivered right to your door. Supporting Philly Foodworks means not only eating healthier, but also contributing to our local sustainable economy. An impressive 90% of every dollar spent stays within the Philadelphia region. Visit phillyfoodworks.com and use the code CITYCAST to receive 20% off your first 3 orders. Plus, enjoy a free pound of strawberries. That's phillyfoodworks.com. From smoke shops to corner stores and gas stations, Philadelphians can pick up colorful packages promising magic mushrooms inside. Yes, we're talking about psychedelics. But Philadelphia Inquirer reporters Max Marin and Ryan Briggs tested some of these products, and it turns out these drugs are not what you think they are. It's Tuesday, May 12th. I'm Trinae Nuri, and we're talking about why Philly stores are stocking unregulated psychedelics on their shelves. Max, Ryan, thanks so much for being on CityCast Philly today.
Great to be back.
Thanks for having us.
You guys have been doing a lot of investigations recently into what products are being sold at smoke shops and corner stores, gas stations, and a lot of it is the drugs that are being marketed to customers. You looked into cannabis products, but for this episode, we're going to be looking at these psychedelics. How did you guys come to this side of the story?
I mean, honestly, it's not hard to find this whole world of unregulated psychedelics because you can walk into almost any smoke shop or gas station and find, that there are these analogs to psilocybin or other, types of hallucinogens that are just being sold right over the counter. So it honestly was something that we found just when we were working on the story about unregulated hemp products. And the more that we just kind of traveled around, we would see this whole range of different hallucinogenics also on sale.
So are these psychedelics or like imitation psychedelics, are they just more available these days?
We definitely noticed an increase even in the time over the last year that we started reporting this. I think when Ryan and I first started our smoke shop reconnaissance, we noticed, 1 or 2 shops, maybe in Center City, were carrying them. And I think over the last year, we just noticed an uptick that was certainly more readily available, more places that were selling the hemp-based THC slash, weed adjacent products. We're just happy to add them to the shelves. And we would talk to our friends and colleagues and say, do you know about this? Has anyone ever tried these over-the-counter psychedelics? And people were sort of mystified. They were like, no, I can't believe they're selling like psychedelics over the counter. Like, what's in it? Like, what is that? What's going on? And so that became the inception of our project here.
This is wild. Okay, so you can walk into a store. Do you have to show ID?
Well, it's completely unregulated. So, I mean, we've talked to people who ran stores and said that they had their own age verification system, that they wouldn't sell to kids, that they would ask to see an ID. But the entire industry is self-regulated. So, I mean, could there be a store somewhere that didn't check ID or that, was unscrupulous enough to sell these products to a child? I mean, sure, there's really no check on anything like that.
Okay, and then let's talk about what types of drugs are on the shelves. Can we even call them drugs?
Oh, they're absolutely drugs, and they're not imitation hallucinogens or psychedelics. They just are psychedelics. They're primarily lab-made psychedelic products. The 2 that we found that were very common were called ethicetine and Pitocin, and those are essentially lab-made chemicals that are maybe a few atoms different from something like psilocybin. And they have very, very similar effects to psilocybin and other hallucinogens that people might be more familiar with.
Okay, so we're talking mushrooms, edibles, things that you can smoke. That's all being sold.
Yeah, I mean, we even saw the variety of formats that these companies are now selling the products in was kind of dizzying. The first thing we noticed was the chocolate bars, which I think anyone that's sort of, been around mushroom products before knows, like, the psilocybin mushrooms are typically like an actual mushroom. And then the second most common format would be like, putting it into a chocolate bar for consumption. But I mean, on the shelves here, again, there's no regulations on what type of products they could put it in. So we would see it in like the format of like a syrup shot, like it looks like a 5-hour energy drink. We would see it in the form of little tablets and pills. We saw one at a trade show, we saw a mushroom vape. And it's all coming from these same unscheduled compounds that are designed to emulate psilocybin, but they can put this stuff, it's basically a chemical powder format, and they can put it into virtually anything. And so you would also
The ice
see
cream cone.
the ice. Oh yeah, thank you. The mushroom infused ice cream cone, like a can. Like you have to picture.
What?
You have to picture like a tiny candy sugar cone, and it's full of psychedelic mushrooms. Give you a 6 to 8 hour trip.
Okay, so are these considered illegal substances by the state and federal government?
That's where it kind of gets a little hazier. I mean, what these underground chemists are doing is they're creating slight chemical variations of more popular hallucinogens. And there is some past legislation that has attempted to ban these types of products, which are generally referred to as analogs. So they're an analog of psilocybin, or another type of more popular hallucinogen. But what we found from talking to producers, some of whom, talk to us quite openly and who are marketing these products publicly, is that they felt that it was unlikely that those laws would actually be enforced, that there were just far more harmful substances out there like fentanyl or something like that that were taking up most of law enforcement's time, and that with these sort of generally like softening attitude towards the sale of other recreational drugs, like many states now have recreational cannabis programs, that people were less likely to feel that this was something that needed to be subject to serious law enforcement. And I mean, so far that attitude has largely been proven correct. There has not really been a lot of law enforcement activity around these specific products. And so, they're sort of openly sold, and it's kind of an untested question, even though there is theoretically legislation out there that has been passed, that has been in effect for decades, that says, yeah, you're really not supposed to do this.
Can I add one thing here?
Yeah, go ahead,
Which
Max.
I think it's important to note that to sort of test out our curiosity about these products, we went to a couple dozen stores. We purchased 20 products. We sent them to 2 labs to get tested, just to figure out what sort of array of compounds were being used. And the one thing we will say is that, in 3 samples we had, they contained psilocybin or psilocin, which is what psilocybin converts to when you take it. So what you see here is that you have this like gray market where there's all of these unscheduled compounds that these manufacturers are like, we're most likely going to be able to get away with this because it would, there's not really, as Ryan said, not a lot of law enforcement interest in tackling these products. But you just see people putting the real banned thing, like they're putting the OG drug into the mix. And so you have this world where like the gray market sort of becomes cover for the black market. They can start to slide in the illicit products because they realize regulation is non-existent. Law enforcement is so lax that this can just become like a sort of conveyor to slide in some of the illicit products that we're actually trying to emulate. And we saw this happen with the hemp-based THC and the weed as well. It's like, yes, the 2018 Farm Bill created a sort of lax environment for people to make hemp-based THC products. But what we ended up seeing happen when you test the products is that you just see they're putting real black market weed into the mix. It becomes this jumbled market where nobody can really tell what's what, and there's no testing or real transparency around what is in these products.
And because it's self-regulated, you also see the other end of that where we tested some products that claimed to be hallucinogens and they just had THC in them. We tested some that didn't seem like they had anything at all in them, that they were just complete placebos.
Have you spoken to anyone that's used these products that
wasn't aware that this is what's in the drugs.
I would say that the average consumer has no idea what is in the drugs. I don't think that we ever encountered anybody who purchased and consumed these not intentionally seeking out a hallucinogen, but there is almost no way to know what you are purchasing. What we found was that lab reports that are often attached to these products through a QR code were rarely accurate. In some cases, they appeared to have been deliberately altered to conceal what was in some of these products, and most of them do not list their active ingredients on the packaging. And, as I was saying before, some of the products didn't seem like they had anything at all in them, so there's like an intentional effort to deceive consumers. So what people are intending to do, what they're intending to consume, and what they are actually consuming, it's really completely up in the air. There's no way for anyone to really have confidence in what they're taking.
We've got more on this after this quick break. Everything feels more expensive right now, but one of Philly's best resources is still completely free. With a free library of Philadelphia card, you get access to thousands of programs, events, and digital resources for all ages. Whether you're looking for something fun to do, hoping to build new skills, or simply want a welcoming place to spend time, the library is here for you. Your library card also opens the doors to a vast digital collection, including ebooks, audiobooks, learning languages, genealogy, and news. At its core, the library is where access meets opportunity. It's a place to explore new interests, gain practical skills, and connect with your community. And don't worry, they don't have those fees if you return your materials late. And anyone who lives, studies, or works in Philadelphia, or is a Pennsylvania resident, can get a library card. Sign up today, freelibrary.org/card, and see what's waiting for you.
Max, Ryan, is this just a Philly problem or is this happening across the country?
It's 100% nationwide. This is a market that has erupted in tandem with the medical establishment looking more seriously at psilocybin and the potential health benefits it can have for treating anxiety, depression, PTSD. Those clinical studies are still ongoing, but we have 2 states now that have created legal psilocybin programs. And within that market, within a culture that has more relaxed attitudes about it, there are these sort of fringe entrepreneurs who are very comfortable ramping up production on something that is, frankly, more accessible to the average consumer, right? If I want to start microdosing psilocybin to treat some depression, I have to move to one of the 2 states that has like a legal program if I want to do it above board. Or I can just walk to the smoke shop and start testing out any number of the, strange products that don't tell you what's in them. When you look at the active ingredient, it doesn't say this contains Pitocin, which is an analog of psilocybin. It functions the same way. It says this contains a proprietary mushroom blend, or this contains a nootropic mushroom blend.
And that can mean anything that we decided we want to basically cook up.
But there's deception even built into the phrasing because it implies that there's some sort of natural mushroom product in these things, which in many cases, it's not accurate. We talked to some producers who were using this language and we said, are you actually using any natural mushrooms in this? And they said, no, it's just a marketing gimmick.
In March, we went to a trade show in Atlantic City, and there were thousands of attendees there that were marketing these products or other recreational drugs. And you had people from New York City, from Texas, from California that were openly marketing these unregulated hallucinogens. So it's definitely safe to say that it's a nationwide trend, and it's a growth industry, especially because some of the unregulated hemp products that we talked about earlier have been attracting more scrutiny, and there have been efforts to clamp down on that. And so some people told us, hey, I used to sell CBD or these hemp products, and we were getting some heat, and we just moved on to the next thing, and that's these unregulated synthetic hallucinogens.
Who are these producers? Are these large companies? Are they like individuals responsible for producing and distributing these products to our local stores?
There are definitely large companies with professional marketing teams with very corporatized, fun branding campaigns around them. The booths at these trade shows where, there's like neon lights and sort of like dance music, and you're like, you feel kind of like you're in like an Apple store in some of them. They're trying to make it seem friendly and accessible. And I think send the message that this is above board and this is, for, discerning drug users who want to try a product, but you poke beyond the veil a little bit, and you do like there's not much behind these companies that you can point to. You can't like some of these big name companies like Polkadot or Road Trip, or I'm blanking on some of the other names, but you go to the websites for these companies and there's no CEO listed, there's no staff that are listed on these products, there's no names you can easily put to them. I mean, sometimes like you look on from product to product, it also like changes location. It'll be manufactured in one state, but it'll say it's, distributed in another state. It's a nationwide network of producers. And there are also a lot of small sort of like mom and pop, one man businesses that have gotten into this game. I mean, we talked to some guys who said, I had $200,000 that I wanted to invest in a business, and I started my own synthetic psychedelics company in a month. Basically, you contact a manufacturer who's willing to produce these compounds in a lab for you. You buy it in bulk, you put it into your chocolate bar or whatever, and you slap some branding on it. And then you can just, again, there's no regulatory barrier to enter the market. So once I have my product, I can just show up at a smoke shop. I have an EIN, a business number that says, I have a business, and you can go to a trade show and distribute it wholesale to this network of smoke shop owners throughout the Philadelphia, New Jersey region. And boom, you're in business.
Are there any city, state, or federal agencies trying to put any laws out there to control this industry?
It would be hard for us to speak, nationwide, but when we reached out to the PA State Police, the NJ State Police, Philly Police, just trying to get a sense of what was going on locally, we didn't really get the sense that this was on their radar.
Were they surprised, or they are just like, we don't have the resources to look into this in any way?
I wouldn't really characterize it as surprise, but I would say that in general, just talking to anyone about this story, there is sort of a lack of awareness at how prevalent this is. And I frankly think that extends to local law enforcement. They sort of acknowledged that they were aware of it. I think the Philly police said that they were heavily focused on fentanyl for obvious reasons in terms of law enforcement. But I do think that there is not even a good sense in law enforcement that you could find this stuff, all next at stores next to the Liberty Bell, on the main line, gas stations all over New Jersey. I mean, it's just everywhere.
I will say that in the suburbs, Montgomery County District Attorney Kevin Steele has taken a more proactive stance towards smoke shops in general. They had a grand jury investigation last year that was focused on the hemp THC products that were being sold to kids in the suburbs. And there's been a lot of action also around kratom, like this, ultra potent form of kratom that basically doubles as a painkiller called 7-OH. And, people are becoming addicted to it. It has addictive dependencies. It acts on the opioid receptors in the brain, certainly a much higher risk than a drug that was made in a lab and it was going to like simulate a mushroom trip. But, that's not to say these products are like without harms entirely, like because there is no regulation or testing or quality control for these products. There have been cases where batches of these products would lead to like mass poisonings. There was one incident in 2024 with a product called Diamond Shrooms, which was a brand that is now defunct, that had to be recalled because there was hundreds of cases of toxicity and it was even linked to a couple of deaths. But instead of a sort of broad law enforcement crackdown that you might imagine where the police or feds are showing up and raiding warehouses, the FDA sort of just issued a public health advisory and a recall. And these products were taken off the shelves after poisoning a bunch of people. And one producer told us basically that's like a warning sign, and everybody is just left to self-regulate after that. And some of the makers of these products felt comfortable knowing that, like, look, even if there is a mass toxicity event with some bad batch of these products, which, does happen, it's not going to shut down the entire industry. I would say that's probably a wait and see incident because, the way that lawmakers tend to react to this stuff is in the moment. And when there is if there is a much more deadly or fatal or, sickening wave of these products, then I think that will certainly start to get more attention.
Right. And that's the unfortunate part. So I guess people listening to this episode, I'll direct them to your full reporting. But are there any other solutions to kind of like combat this?
Well, there's plenty of advocates that would say, this is a gray market that exists because we have not been able to come up with a regulated system. There is research that shows that there can be beneficial qualities to hallucinogens, if they are administered correctly, produced correctly, and obviously, distributed in a regulated system so that they're not being sold to children. And even advocates for drug legalization will look at this unregulated market and say, this isn't what we want, right? No one really wants this. This is sort of like a Wild West type situation. The consumer doesn't know what they're getting. Even if you're someone who wants to, take hallucinogens, you don't know what you're getting with any of these products. So it's really the worst of all worlds. And I think, for some of the advocates that we talk to, what they want to see is some kind of a broader conversation about this that results in, a regulated, controlled system, and perhaps a federally regulated system, so that it isn't all devolving down to individual states that might come up with one type of solution or another type of solution that perpetuates the gray market, because people will say, oh, I heard these products were legal here in Oregon, let's say. So maybe they're legal in another state. I don't know. That's a lot of what we encountered, is that the gray market exists because people don't really know what the rules are supposed to be because it's so varying.
We've got more on this story after the break.
You went to the trade shows, you talked to these producers. I heard you say you kind of got a sense of like, it is kind of a wild, wild west. You can take some money, start a business pretty quickly. But what's their reaction to the legality of all of this? Were you able to ask them that?
Sort of what I was saying before, the sense that we got was that they were not really concerned about law enforcement, that there didn't seem to be a lot of attention from law enforcement. And I mean, we also encountered people who, would say, well, even if they come after one type of hallucinogen, we could just make a different one. And then it kind of starts the whole process over again. You change again, you can change a few more atoms. You come up with a slightly different product and you say, this isn't the thing that's illegal. This is something else.
Max, what was some of the most alarming things you found after testing these products?
Well, by and large, the substances that we confirmed to be the most prevalent in these drugs were indeed designed in labs to emulate the effect of like a mushroom trip. They contain some variant of psilocybin. And all of the people we've talked to who have done them, who are selling them, say, it's going to be very much like a mushroom trip. And people are going to be sort of getting an approximate experience of what they desire. But I think what our testing found is that you're really rolling the dice when you take any of these products, because out of the 20 we tested, half of them probably contained those products. Another couple contained THC or some type of CBD product. Some of them didn't contain anything at all or didn't appear to. And then we had one case where the drug that we found was not at all a hallucinogen or anything even that was like known to chemists. It was called Miss Molecule, and it was purported, on the packaging to be a sort of psychedelic experience, but the only active compound we found in it was an obscure chemical that was related to GHB, which is a, central nervous system depressant and sedative. We don't actually know what this compound does. We talked to several chemists and ran the obscure name of this chemical by them, and they were like, this is absolutely an analog to GHB, but we don't know what this does. Like, we have never seen any studies of this being used in humans. There's really no research out there about what this chemical is. So buyer beware is sort of the moral of the story. I mean, that is pretty alarming when you think about the experience of a typical consumer, you're going with a friend, you say, oh yeah, we can get some psychedelics from the smoke shop. And you go in and you're looking at this cabinet display of 20 colorful products. And you're like, well, I don't know which one is which. They all sort of don't tell me what's in them. And you just pick one and you might have a wildly different experience. I mean, you might have a dangerous experience. I mean, there is a degree of just risk associated with, I think, all drug use in general, but the veneer of like a legitimate business that you can walk into and just be like, oh, all of these products must be like somewhat safe or transparent with me about what they are. That sort of like the consumer agreement sort of falls apart when you start to look at what's actually in them.
If someone has a bad experience or something happens to someone after they take one of these products, who would you call?
If people are ending up in the hospital or having, mental health issues or something as a result of taking these products, it would be very hard to track. There's not a lot of data on these products because, again, they're unregulated. If you go to the hospital and you're like, I just took a unknown mystery substance that I bought at a smoke shop, they have to classify that under some medical code that doesn't exist yet. They don't know what this product is that you took. They have to do blood testing. And again, we're sort of in early days here where they just, the medical establishment doesn't really have the system or the framework to sort of track these unregulated products and whatever damage they are having.
All right, Max, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me and breaking all this down on CityCast Philly today.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks, Junai.
Read Max and Ryan's full report from the Inquirer through the link in the show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Philly. Really some interesting reporting. Let us know what you think about the psychedelics being sold in our local convenience stores. Also, rate the show, leave us a review, and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to sign up for our morning newsletter to learn more about what else Philly's talking about. And don't forget, you can support the show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Philly neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with a chat about politics and what's on your ballot. Bye.